I sat on my front porch in the late Texas afternoon heat, watching the sun dip low over the Dallas skyline. The air was heavy and still, cicadas droning in the oak trees lining our quiet suburban street. If you didn't know any better, you'd think it was a peaceful summer evening like any other. But inside, I felt a storm brewing. Something was off in my life, a gut-deep suspicion I couldn't shake. My wife, Sarah, had been acting strange for weeks. Little things at first. Coming home late from work with flimsy excuses, guarding her phone like it held state secrets, a new perfume she never used around me. I'd been married to her for 9 years, long enough to sense when something wasn't right. And lately, my instinct screamed that my trust was being betrayed. That evening, Sarah was supposedly out with her girlfriends for a last-minute girls' night. She had laughed it off when telling me, saying I shouldn't wait up. I played the understanding husband, even managed a smile and a joke about not having too much fun without me. Inside, though, my chest tightened. Girls' night, huh? Maybe, or maybe not. It wouldn't be the first white lie lately. As dusk settled in, I wandered back inside our home, a comfortable two-story house we'd bought together just outside Dallas. I tried distracting myself with TV, then a bit of paperwork from my job. No use. My eyes kept drifting to the clock, my mind conjuring images of what Sarah might actually be doing, with whom she might be doing it. At some point, I found myself in our bedroom staring at the closet. On the top shelf was an old shoebox where we kept spare keys and random keepsakes. My fingers grazed the edge of that box almost of their own accord. I'd stashed something else there months ago, a GPS tracker about the size of a thumb drive. I had bought it on a whim after reading an article about modern surveillance gadgets. At the time, I wasn't sure why I got it. Now I knew. My heart pounded as I fetched the tracker and one of Sarah's spare car keys. This wasn't exactly legal, but then again, if my wife was doing what I feared, she wasn't exactly being moral either. A bitter taste filled my mouth as I thought about it. Let's see where you really go on your little outings, Sarah. An hour later, I stood in the dim glow of our garage's single bulb. I opened her car door quietly and knelt, reaching under the driver's seat. With trembling hands, I affixed the small tracker up into the metal frame and synced it to the app on my phone. It blinked green, active. A drop of sweat trailed down my forehead, but I felt oddly calm, focused. I wasn't confronting her outright, not yet. First, I needed to know. Really know. I closed the car and stepped back into the house, wiping my hands on my jeans. The clock read 9:17 p.m. Still no word from Sarah. Typically, she'd text or call by now, even if she was with friends. Another red flag. I sank into my armchair in the living room, phone in hand, staring at the little map on the screen. A single blue dot pinged gently, representing the tracker's location. At first, it stayed still, parked presumably near the downtown restaurant where Sarah claimed the girls were meeting. Nothing unusual there, but as the minutes ticked by, that blue dot began to move. I zoomed in. Her car was leaving downtown, heading north. Not toward our suburb. This route veered toward the interstate. My pulse quickened. The interstate at this hour? The dot merged onto I-35 heading out of the city. There were no popular bars or restaurants that direction, just highway and, eventually, a cluster of motels near the airport. A sour, knowing feeling twisted in my gut. I sat in silence, watching the dot cruise along the highway at a steady speed. Every mile it traveled felt like another nail in the coffin of my marriage. My hands had gone cold despite the warm night. After about 20 minutes, the dot slowed and stopped, just off an exit by Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. I tapped the screen to see the location details, and a knot formed in my throat as the map loaded. Lone Star Lodge, Airport Motel. I clenched the phone, knuckles whitening. A budget motel by the airport, notorious as a rendezvous spot. Girls' night, my ass. Anger and pain flashed hot inside me, but I forced myself to stay composed. This was the confirmation I'd dreaded. And I had it now, at least the where. I needed the who. Without hesitating, I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. If she was at Lone Star Lodge, I would go there. Not to confront, not yet, but to see with my own eyes. I felt strangely detached as I stepped into the humid Texas night and got into my truck. The hurt was there, yes, a lead weight on my chest, but it was swiftly being overtaken by something else. A cold, clear purpose. I drove in a focused haze. The normally bustling Dallas streets were quieter now, as late evening turned to night. Streetlights and neon motel signs streaked past as I neared the airport district. My heartbeat drummed steadily in my ears, oddly calm now that I was in motion. Just get proof, I told myself, fingers tightening on the wheel. See it for yourself, then decide what to do. When I pulled into the cracked asphalt lot of the Lone Star Lodge, I cut the engine and sat in the dark for a moment. Rows of beige doors lined the two-story motel, each with a dim exterior light. I scanned the parking lot. It didn't take long to spot Sarah's cherry-red sedan parked in a far corner, half hidden under a broken lamp. I parked on the opposite end of the lot, partially behind a hulking white van for cover. Adrenaline pounded in my ears as I crept toward room 112. Approaching from the backside, I counted the doors from where her car was. Room 112. The curtains were drawn tight, but a sliver of dull yellow light seeped out at the edges of the window. For a moment I stood there, partially concealed by a shrub, fighting the urge to barge in and catch them in the act. Images I didn't want flooded my mind, my wife entwined with some faceless lover on cheap motel sheets. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. I needed evidence, but I also needed to keep my cool. If I kicked that door down now, I might do something irreversible. Instead, I pulled out my phone and activated the camera. My hands shook as I zoomed in on the door of room 112. I snapped a photo of her car outside it, license plate clearly visible. Then I crept closer along the wall until I was right beside the window of their room. Through the thin wall, I could hear muffled voices, a man's low tone, a woman's soft laugh that unmistakably belonged to Sarah. My stomach churned, fury surging, but I swallowed it down. I lifted my phone again and, as quietly as I could, began recording a video. I angled it to capture the door and anyone who might emerge. And then I waited. Each second felt like an eternity, but finally, the knob of room 112 rattled. I tensed, holding my breath. The door opened, and my wife stepped out into the hazy light. Sarah's blonde hair was disheveled, her blouse rumpled. She looked over her shoulder, smiling at someone inside. A tall figure followed, a man in a dark shirt. As he came into view, the light fell on his face and I felt a cold shock of recognition. David Mercer. I knew him. Not well, but enough. David was a regional manager at the tech firm where Sarah worked. I'd met him at a company Christmas party last year. We'd shaken hands. He'd smiled and chatted with me all the while, I now realized, probably sleeping with my wife behind my back. Rage flared white-hot in my veins, but I forced myself not to move. Through the camera's screen, I watched them share a quick, intimate kiss. Sarah giggled at something he whispered, and they both looked so damn comfortable together, like a real couple. My grip on the phone tightened until I feared I'd crack the case. I snapped a few photos in rapid succession, each flash disabled so as not to give me away. The images were a dagger to my heart. Sarah resting her head briefly on David's shoulder, his hand on the small of her back. They parted at her car. He whispered something and she nodded, giving him a final peck on the cheek before slipping into her sedan. David watched as she started the engine. I ducked further behind the shrub as her headlights swept over the lot and her car pulled away. I didn't dare move until her taillights disappeared into the night. Breathing shallowly, I peeked out in time to see David walking to his own vehicle, a sleek black BMW a few spots down. He looked around warily. For a second I thought he might have sensed me there, then got in and drove off in the opposite direction. Only when I was utterly alone in that parking lot did I let out the breath I'd been holding. My hands were trembling violently now, the adrenaline come down hitting hard. I stopped the video recording and saved it. Evidence. Proof of what my gut had been telling me. Leaning against the motel's stucco wall, I closed my eyes. A strange calmness settled over me like the eye of a storm. In that moment, one thing crystallized in my mind with cold clarity. I wasn't going to confront them. Not yet. They had no idea I knew, and that gave me power. No, I wouldn't explode in anger or break down in tears. I would do something far more effective. Betrayal of this magnitude deserved an equally monumental response. As I walked back to my truck under the indifferent Texas sky, I felt the first contours of a plan forming. A dark, calculated path to make them pay. Sarah and her lover thought they could make a fool of me. They were about to learn that betrayal is a game two can play, and I intended to win. Chapter 2. Cold Calculation. I didn't sleep at all that night. By the time I returned from the motel and slipped back into my house, it was nearly 1 a.m. I crept into the dark bedroom, every movement quiet and controlled. Sarah was there, fast asleep under the covers, looking for all the world like the loving wife she pretended to be. I stood in the doorway for a long minute just watching her silhouette breathe in and out. A part of me wanted to shake her awake and confront her with every vile thing I'd seen. But I didn't. Instead, I turned and walked to the guest room down the hall, shutting the door softly behind me. Lying on the guest bed, I stared up at the ceiling fan as it whirred lazily. My mind was racing, yet everything felt oddly clear. I replayed the scenes at the motel again and again, every betraying kiss, every smile they'd shared. The pain was like a raw wound, but with each pass, my anger cauterized it, sealing it into something hardened and cold. By dawn, I had mentally drafted the outline of my revenge. No half measures, no mercy. They had destroyed my world, so I would methodically dismantle theirs, piece by piece. The first step was gathering information. Knowledge is power, after all, and I intended to know every secret Sarah and David had. They already had a head start, sneaking around behind my back. Time for me to catch up. Around 6 a.m., I finally heard movement in the house. Sarah shuffling into the kitchen. I schooled my face into a mask of groggy normalcy and emerged from the guest room pretending I'd woken up early. She flashed me a sleepy smile, hair tousled, as if nothing in the world was wrong. It took all my restraint not to scowl. "You're up early," she yawned, reaching for the coffee pot. "Couldn't sleep," I replied truthfully, sliding into one of the kitchen chairs. My voice was steady, casual. "You came in late. Have fun with the girls?" Sarah paused ever so slightly. I saw the briefest flicker in her eyes before she turned away. "Yeah," she said lightly, pouring coffee. "It was a nice night. Cindy's birthday, you know how it is. We might have overdone the margaritas." She gave a little laugh that probably sounded natural to anyone else, but I heard the forced edge in it. My stomach turned. Liar. I sipped the coffee she placed in front of me, hiding my disgust behind the mug. "Glad you enjoyed yourself," I managed. She leaned down and pecked my cheek. I fought not to recoil. "Sorry I was out so late. You know how we girls lose track of time chatting?" "Mm-hmm." I watched her carefully as she moved about the kitchen. Was that guilt I saw lurking behind her casual smile? Or just the glow of someone freshly satisfied by her lover? The thought made me grip the mug tighter, but I kept my tone mild. "I'm just glad you're safe. That area downtown can get sketchy after dark." Sarah met my eyes briefly, perhaps looking to see if there was any suspicion. She found none. I'd made sure of that. She had no idea I knew she hadn't been downtown at all. After breakfast, she went to shower. I offered to tidy up the kitchen, saying I had a late start at work today. In truth, I had taken a personal day. There were far more important things on my agenda than my engineering job. The moment I heard the water running in the bathroom, I sprung into action. I fetched her purse from the hall table where she'd dropped it last night and slid out her smartphone. My heart pounded, but my hands were steady. Over the past few weeks, I had grown suspicious enough to install a spy app on her phone, a little package quietly sideloaded one evening when she'd left it charging unattended. It logged her texts and call history to a hidden folder. Now I quickly connected her phone to my laptop and downloaded the newest logs. While the data transferred, I scrolled her recent messages directly. As expected, many from David, under a fake name Diane in her contacts. Cute. They'd been careful, but not careful enough. Last night there were messages confirming the motel meetup. Reading their flirty banter made my lip curl in disgust. There were also older messages, midday chats while she was at work, planning rendezvous, even bad-mouthing me occasionally. "He's been so busy at work he didn't even notice," one of her texts said. I swallowed the bitter bile rising in my throat and kept reading, committing every detail to memory. I copied photos too. She had several selfies she'd presumably sent him, some racy enough to boil my blood. Evidence, I reminded myself, saving them into an encrypted folder on my laptop. The more ammunition I had, the better. Next, I dug into her email on the laptop. I'd long ago guessed her email password, our anniversary date. She never expected I'd have reason to snoop. A quick search of her inbox revealed a reservation confirmation from the Lone Star Lodge dated 2 days ago, booked under David's name, but using her email and our joint credit card. Bold. Or maybe just stupid. I heard the shower shut off. Time was up. I put everything back exactly as it was and returned to the kitchen, heart still hammering from the adrenaline rush of my little burglary. When Sarah came out dressed for work, I was at the sink washing the last dish. She looked pleasantly surprised. "You didn't have to do all that," she said, giving me an appreciative smile that might have warmed my heart once. I just shrugged. Figured I'd help out. I might work from home a bit this morning, go in after lunch. She nodded, seemingly unfazed. Good. If she wasn't worried, she'd slip up more. We kissed goodbye at the door. Her kiss was as familiar as it had been for 9 years, but now it felt alien, tainted by deceit. I smiled and waved as she drove off. The second her car rounded the corner, my face fell into a hard glare. Enough playing house. I had what I needed for now. I spent the next few hours compiling a dossier. On my laptop, I organized everything. Time-stamped photos of the motel embrace, screenshots of incriminating texts, copies of emails and receipts. I even included a list of dates and times I gleaned from her message history. Every lie she'd told me about meetings or girls' nights, cross-referenced with when she was actually with him. It was a comprehensive catalog of betrayal. But I wasn't going to simply confront her with it. No, this trove of evidence had larger purposes. 1. To secure my position when I inevitably filed for divorce. In Texas, infidelity isn't a crime, but it sure can tip a divorce settlement. I wanted ironclad proof of her adultery so I could strip her of any claim to my assets when the time came. 2. To utterly nuke their cozy little world from orbit when I chose to deploy these bombs. I leaned back in my chair, scanning the neat folder structure on the screen, and allowed myself a thin smile. Knowledge, check. The next task, learn everything about David Mercer. I recalled what I knew of him. He was in his early 40s, a mid-level manager at the tech company where Sarah worked as an analyst. Married, I was pretty sure. I remembered being introduced to a brunette woman at that Christmas party as David's wife, Monica. Did they have kids? Possibly. I hadn't paid attention at the time. Now, of course, I was very interested in David's family situation. A cheating wife is bad enough. A cheating husband messing with my wife, that opened even more avenues for vengeance. I did some digging online. Social media, LinkedIn, anything I could find. LinkedIn gave his work bio. He'd been with the company 10 years, had a good reputation in their Dallas office. Well-liked, a mentor figure. I almost laughed at the irony. There was a professional headshot of him, tall, athletic, with a winning smile, a regular golden boy. On Facebook, which he hadn't locked down, fool that he was, I found personal details, married to Monica for 15 years. 2 children, a boy and a girl in elementary school. They lived not far from here in a neighboring suburb. The posts on his timeline painted the picture of a dedicated family man. Vacation photos at Disney World, sweet anniversary post to his wife, him coaching his son's baseball team. It was almost sickening to see how deep his hypocrisy ran. I saved several of his family photos as well. I wondered how cheerful that family would look after I finished with him. To get more, I needed access beyond public info. So I reached out to someone who could quietly fill in the blanks. Ethan, an old college buddy of mine who now worked as a private investigator. We'd kept in sparse touch, the occasional Christmas card or beer when crossing paths. I remembered a time years ago he'd half-jokingly told me to call if I ever needed someone tailed or background checked. Well, that day had come. I gave Ethan a call on my personal cell, taking care to step outside onto the backyard patio, out of earshot of any nosy neighbors or hidden devices. One can never be too careful. After a bit of small talk, I got to the point in a low voice. "I've got a delicate situation, and I could use your expertise. Discretion is a must." There was a pause, then a knowing sigh on the other end. "This about Sarah?" he asked softly. He'd met her a few times at gatherings. "Yeah," I said through clenched teeth. "She's cheating. I have proof. But I need more background on the guy. Everything you can find." "Damn, Jack," Ethan murmured. The sympathy in his tone was one thing I didn't need, but I let it slide. "I'm sorry. But yeah, I can help. What's his name?" "David Mercer." lives in Plano, works at Tech Core Solutions in Dallas, married to Monica Mercer, 2 kids, I recited crisply. I suspect he's been screwing around with my wife for a while. I could almost see Ethan taking notes. All right, I'll dig up what I can. Financials, any skeletons in his closet, you name it. You sure you want to go down this path? Sometimes it's better to just walk away. He knew me well enough to know I wasn't the forgive and forget type, but he felt obligated to ask, I suppose. I stared out at my backyard, at the rose bushes Sarah had planted last spring, now wilting from neglect. Not this time, E. He picked the wrong man's wife, they both did. My voice was ice. Ethan exhaled. Understood. I'll be in touch when I have something. Give me a few days. Take your time, but not too much. And Ethan, keep it quiet. You got it. After hanging up, I felt a grim satisfaction. If there was any dirt to find on David, Ethan would uncover it. And if David had so much as an overdue library book, I'd consider how to use it to ruin him. While waiting for Ethan's intel, I continued laying groundwork. I contacted a divorce attorney that afternoon, a hard-nosed woman named Linda Pierce, who had a reputation for eviscerating unfaithful spouses in court. In a discreet initial consult, I laid out my scenario without names. Adultery, clear evidence, significant assets at stake. We had a house, joint investments, though most were funded by me. Linda assured me that Texas courts could factor in adultery for unequal asset division. With solid proof, I could likely keep the lion's share. That was music to my ears. I retained her on the spot, instructing her to quietly prepare divorce papers, but to hold off filing until I gave the green light. No point tipping off Sarah until my other dominoes were in place. By the time evening rolled around, I had done more than many jilted husbands manage in weeks. I had banked evidence, begun legal maneuvering, and set a PI on my wife's lover. And I'd done it all without Sarah suspecting a thing. When Sarah came home that night, I greeted her with a warm smile and a light kiss, as if I were just happy to see my wife after a day's work. Inside, I watched her every move like a hawk. She seemed a bit on edge, perhaps her conscience pricking, or maybe David had informed her his wife was acting strangely. Who knows? Maybe Monica had sensed something. But Sarah made small talk about her day, mentioning some boring meetings, and how she felt bad for leaving me alone last night. I played the gracious husband, joking that it gave me a chance to catch up on a TV show she didn't like. We had dinner, takeout Thai, and watched a sitcom together on the couch. It was absurd, sitting there beside her, playing the role of a loving couple while I knew the truth. I chuckled at the right moments, even put an arm around her. But every time she wasn't looking, my face fell into that cold, distant stare. Soon, I promised myself silently. Soon you'll feel everything I feel, Sarah, and more. Late that night, after Sarah was asleep, I checked my phone and found exactly what I was waiting for. An encrypted email from Ethan. He'd marked it high priority. I opened the message and my eyes gleamed at the contents. Attached was a dossier on David Mercer. It was thorough for a first pass. In summary, David's professional record wasn't spotless. A few years back, a female subordinate had filed an HR complaint alleging inappropriate behavior by him at a company retreat, which was quietly settled. So he had a history of mixing work and pleasure, and the company would not be happy to learn he was at it again, especially not with my wife. There were also tidbits about his personal life. A wife, Monica, with no clue about his affair, 2 young kids, a big mortgage, a perfect little world I planned to shatter. I absorbed all this, feeling both excited and grim. This was it, the blueprint of David's life with pressure points helpfully marked. I forwarded the dossier to my secure folder. As I closed my laptop, a sense of inevitability settled over me. Everything was lining up. They had no idea of the storm about to hit them. I almost felt a dark thrill at the thought. Lying in bed, with Sarah softly snoring beside me, I stared at the ceiling once more. Tonight, though, I wasn't lost in despair or heartache. I was meticulously calculating, picturing each step that would bring their lives crashing down. In the quiet darkness, I allowed myself a whisper, so faint it wouldn't wake her. You're mine, Sarah, and I'm going to make sure you lose everything you value, just like you made me lose you. She didn't stir, but a small smile crept over my face. The pieces were all in position. Tomorrow, I would begin the game in earnest. Chapter 3. Striking the Match. I launched the first phase of my revenge 2 days later, once I had everything prepared. Patience was key. I wanted each blow to land with maximum effect. Rushing would only risk mistakes. In those 2 days, I continued to act the doting, oblivious husband at home, all while coordinating behind the scenes to set my traps. My first target was David's home, specifically his unsuspecting wife, Monica. If there was one person who deserved to know about his treachery besides me, it was her, and her discovery would light a fire that burned his comfortable life from within. On Wednesday morning, I called in sick to work. Sarah had already left for the office, giving me a wide window to operate. I retrieved a manila envelope from my desk. Inside was a collection of carefully curated devastation. Glossy printed photos of Sarah and David's motel rendezvous, screenshots of their lovey-dovey text messages with incriminating context highlighted, and a brief anonymous letter I'd typed on my computer and printed out. The letter read, Monica, you don't know me, but I recently discovered that my wife is having an affair with your husband, David. I thought you should know the truth that they are hiding from us. Enclosed are photos and messages as proof. I am so sorry to bring you this pain, but you deserve to know what he's doing behind your back. You are not the only one he's hurt. A friend. No names. No identifiers that could lead back to me easily. Let them wonder who a friend was. Another co-worker? A jilted friend? It didn't matter. The evidence would speak louder than any signature. Just before noon, I took a drive out to Plano where the Mercer family lived. It was a pleasant, tree-lined neighborhood of upscale homes, the kind with 2 SUVs in every driveway and neat lawns out front. I had been there once before for a holiday party Sarah dragged me to years ago. Funny, back then, I'd been impressed with David's life. Beautiful wife, beautiful house, kids playing in the yard. Now I was about to smash that picture to bits. I parked a block away and walked through a small green belt that ran behind their street, coming up stealthily near the back of the Mercer property. I felt a little thrill creeping through someone else's yard in broad daylight, but I was dressed inconspicuously. Just another delivery guy or handyman if anyone glanced out a window. From behind a hedge, I observed the house for a minute. It was quiet. David would be at work and the kids at school. Likely only Monica was home, or perhaps she'd run errands. Either way, the stage was set. I circled around to the front sidewalk and strode up to their mailbox as if I belonged. With a quick glance around, no nosy neighbors in sight, I slipped the manila envelope inside, buried amid some junk mail that was already sticking out. The red flag on the box was up, meaning the mailman hadn't come yet or had just been hard to tell. Either way, she'd find it soon enough. I didn't linger. As much as I wanted to stay and witness the moment Monica opened that envelope, I couldn't risk being spotted. I retreated back the way I came and returned to my car around the block, adrenaline humming through me. Phase 1 was in motion. I imagined Monica's face when she pulled out those photos. The shock, the devastation, then the fury. It would be nuclear. My only regret was not being a fly on their wall when David's perfect wife confronted him with the ugly truth. Fortunately, I had other means to observe the fallout. On my drive home, I popped in a pair of earbuds connected to my second phone, a cheap prepaid I'd bought solely to access the spy app on Sarah's phone without using my main device. If anything blew up today, I expected frantic communication between David and my wife. It was around 1 p.m. when the first crack in the dam appeared. My earbud pinged quietly with an intercepted text. Sarah messaging David. Sarah, hey, how's your day? Haven't heard from you. I smirked. Fishing for attention, are we? There was no immediate reply from David. Maybe he was in a meeting, or maybe something was already happening. Another hour crawled by. I busied myself from home, half working remotely and half keeping ears on the feed. Then just after 2 p.m., a series of texts came flooding in rapid succession. It was like listening to a dam burst. First from David to Sarah. David, we have a serious problem, I can't talk long. Sarah, what? What's going on? David, Monica knows. Someone sent her pictures and messages. She's hysterical, accusing me of everything. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Bullseye. I could almost picture the scene. Monica waiting for him at home, fury in her eyes. Sarah took a minute to respond. When she did, her tone was frantic. Sarah, oh my God, do you think it was Jack? Did he do this? I raised an eyebrow at the phone. Interesting that I was her first suspect. Perhaps my act hadn't been as flawless as I thought, or maybe it was just guilt speaking. Either way, it didn't matter if they suspected me, so long as they couldn't prove a thing. David's reply came after a delay, likely because he was in the thick of it with Monica. David, I don't know. Possibly. Or maybe someone from work found out. Or a PI, she won't say who sent it. She's threatening divorce. A grim satisfaction settled in my chest. Stage 1 and already talk of divorce. Keep pushing, I urged silently. Break him, Monica. Sarah. Jesus, David, I'm freaking out. What do we do? David. Nothing right now. Damage control. I have to deal with her. She's going to call your husband, she said. That made me grin darkly. I wondered what Monica might say to me if she did call. Maybe I'd let it go to voicemail just to keep appearances of innocence. Or perhaps I'd pick up and act blindsided and heartbroken, which wouldn't be entirely acting. But the call never came, at least not yet. I continued reading. Sarah, she's calling Jack? Oh God, if he didn't know before, he will now. David, I'm so sorry, I'll try to calm her down. I'll talk to you later. I can't message anymore, she's watching me. So Monica was keeping him on a short leash now, good for her, and good for me. Sarah sent a few more panicked texts that went unanswered. It was clear David had bigger problems in front of him than soothing his side piece. After a while, Sarah stopped trying to reach him. I set my phone aside and allowed myself a full, genuine smile for the first time in ages. It was working. In one afternoon, David's happy home was exploding, and Sarah's nerves were shot, and not a shred of it could be traced back to me. As far as anyone knew, some anonymous friend, or perhaps a guilty conscience, had exposed them. That evening, I decided to get a glimpse of the damage in person. I drove by David's neighborhood again around 7 p.m., just as twilight was fading. Parking discreetly down the street, I took a slow walk past the Mercer house. The lights inside were on. Through the front window, I could see the foyer and part of the living room. There, silhouettes moved in agitated fashion. I caught sight of Monica's figure near the doorway, arms crossed tightly. David was a few paces away, gesturing with his hands, pleading or explaining. It was hard to tell. Even from outside, I could hear their raised voices faintly through the evening air. I lingered by a neighbor's oak tree, pretending to tie my shoelace, and eavesdropped as best I could. Snatches of their heated argument reached me. Monica's voice, strained and furious. Years of our marriage, David. How could you... David's tone was muffled, placating. Oh, only a mistake. Fix this. Think of the kids. Then Monica again, louder, breaking into sobs. You embarrassed me. Everyone will know. Her words dissolved into crying. I risked a glance. Monica had crumpled onto the bottom stair, face in her hands. David hovered, uncertain whether to comfort her or keep distance. For a moment, I felt a pang of something almost like pity. Not for David, never for him, but for his wife. She was a collateral casualty in this war. A necessary one, I told myself. Better she learned the truth now than live in his lies. And if her suffering fueled David's downfall, so be it. As I watched, David placed a hand on Monica's shoulder. She slapped it away and sprung up, shouting now. Don't you dare. Get out, David. Get out of this house. That was my cue to move along. I walked down the sidewalk, heart pounding in exhilaration as I heard a door slam from the Mercer's direction. A few seconds later, I saw David's black BMW in the driveway, headlights flashing on. He was leaving, presumably at his wife's command. I kept my head down and face shielded as he drove past me on the street. I needn't have bothered. He was so distracted I doubt he noticed a lone pedestrian. His car roared away and I watched its taillights disappear into the night. Not unlike how Sarah's had 2 nights before from the motel. The irony was sweet. David had slunk off from the motel after betting my wife, and now he was slinking away from his own home, cast out in disgrace. Poetic. That night, back into my own neighborhood, I indulged in a small celebration, a glass of fine bourbon from a bottle I'd been saving. The first strike had landed perfectly. I savored the smoky warmth as it went down my throat and looked out the window at the moonlit street. In the distance, thunder rumbled, a spring storm brewing. Fitting, I thought. I was only just getting started. The storm I'd unleash on them was far from over. Before bed, I checked the spy app logs one more time. There were a few new messages between Sarah and David, timestamped later in the evening. Sarah, I'm here if you need me. I love you. I sneered at that. Even now, she was thinking of him, worrying over him. Pathetic. David, she kicked me out. I'm at a hotel. I'm so sorry, Sarah. This is a mess. We'll figure something out. Sarah, I can't believe this is happening. Do you think Jack knows? Monica hasn't called or anything. David, not sure. Monica threatened to call him, but maybe she hasn't yet. Maybe she's too upset dealing with me. I chuckled. They were hoping, praying I was still ignorant. For now, I'd let them believe that. It kept them off balance. Sarah, if Jack finds out, he'll leave me. My life will be over. Those words jumped out at me. I read them twice, feeling an unexpected flare of anger and dark satisfaction. Your life will be over. She had no idea how true that was becoming. But the fact she still cared more about losing me now after what she'd done, it was almost laughable. Did she regret cheating, or just regret getting caught? Either way, it was too late for her, for both of them. I set the phone aside and stretched out in bed, feeling the slightest easing of the tightness in my chest. I was winning, one step at a time, and as I drifted off to the distant sound of thunder, I thought about the next phase, already eager to execute the next move that would push them further into the abyss. Chapter 4. Career Crash. True to my promise to myself, I didn't let the dust settle. With David's home life now in tatters, it was time to obliterate the next pillar of their world, their careers. If they thought the worst was behind them after Monica's discovery, they were sorely mistaken. The day after Monica kicked David out, I went back to my office job as usual. I had to keep up appearances, but my focus was anywhere but on work. All I could think about was my next move. By that afternoon, I slipped out early, feigning a headache, and hurried home to put the plan in motion. I sat at my desk in my quiet study, a fresh cup of coffee growing cold beside me as I composed an email that would seal both Sarah's and David's professional fates. Using a brand new throwaway email account, I addressed it to the HR department and several high-ranking executives at TechCore Solutions, their employer. The subject line read, Urgent Ethics Concern, Workplace Misconduct, Anonymous Report. I took a slow breath and began typing, my fingers flying with precise intent. To whom it may concern, it has come to my attention that a high-level manager at TechCore Solutions, David Mercer, has been engaging in an inappropriate sexual affair with one of his direct reports, Mrs. Sarah, last name. This affair has been ongoing for some time and has created a toxic work environment, including potential favoritism and ethical breaches. This is not the first instance of Mr. Mercer's misconduct. Records will show a previous complaint by a female employee in 2022 regarding inappropriate behavior on a work trip, which was quietly settled. It appears Mr. Mercer has continued abusing his position of authority. I have evidence of the current affair, including dated photographs of Mr. Mercer and Mrs. last name together outside the workplace and copies of intimate correspondence between them. For legal reasons, I am not attaching these materials here, but I am prepared to share them with proper authorities or legal counsel if required. Suffice it to say, they leave little doubt as to the nature of their relationship. As a concerned party who cares about TechCore Solutions' integrity, I urge you to investigate this matter immediately. The situation not only violates company policy regarding relationships between managers and subordinates, but it also exposes the company to potential liability, e.g., claims of favoritism, hostile work environment, or sexual harassment. For the sake of confidentiality and my own protection, I prefer to remain anonymous. However, I trust that the leadership will handle this discreetly yet decisively. Sincerely, a concerned individual. I reread the draft twice, fine-tuning the language to sound convincing and professional. It struck the right notes, concerned, neutral, with just enough detail to force their hand. The mention of prior complaints and potential lawsuits would send any corporate HR into panic mode. Satisfied, I hit send. The email whooshed off into cyberspace, carrying with it the doom of their careers. A grim smile tugged at my lips. If TechCore acted quickly, and I suspected they would, David and Sarah would soon be sweating under corporate interrogation. Sure enough, it didn't take long for the consequences to boomerang back. On Friday, 2 days after I sent the email, I noticed Sarah acting strangely when she returned home. She was pale and jumpy, slipping in through the front door an hour earlier than usual. I was in the kitchen ostensibly preparing dinner. In truth, I'd been anxiously awaiting news. "You're home early," I remarked, gently stirring a pot on the stove. "Everything all right?" Sarah forced a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I wasn't feeling well, so I took off a bit early." She headed straight for the liquor cabinet and poured herself a double measure of whiskey. That was very unlike her. She rarely drank spirits straight. I pretended not to notice the tremor in her hand as she took a gulp. "Sorry to hear that. Nothing serious, I hope?" She avoided my gaze. "No, just a migraine." Her voice lacked its usual pep. She downed the rest of the whiskey in one go and exhaled shakily. "I think I'll lie down for a bit." I watched her retreat to the bedroom, her shoulders tense. I knew a work headache when I saw one. With a neutral expression, I turned back to the stove, but inside I was burning with curiosity and excitement. Something had definitely happened at TechCore today. Later that night, after Sarah had picked at the dinner I made and gone to bed early, I finally saw the confirmation I was waiting for. My secondary phone lit up with new messages captured by the spy app, a conversation between Sarah and David, starting in the late morning. "Sarah, HR just emailed me and asked for a meeting at 2 p.m. Did you get one too?" So they'd been summoned. David: "Yes, we need to talk ASAP. Did someone report us? I thought we were careful at work." Sarah: "I don't know, but they mentioned an ethics concern." God, David. There was a gap of a couple hours, likely when those meetings took place. Then the text resumed, more urgently. "Sarah, it's bad. They know everything, or at least suspect. They had emails and times we were seen together off-site. They said something about a previous incident with you. David, they put me on immediate leave." Even though I expected this, reading her words still gave me a jolt of vindictive pleasure. Sarah had essentially just been suspended, if not outright fired. I pictured her sitting in HR, trying to deny things, only to be shown some evidence or told of witnesses. How small and exposed she must have felt. David's reply came through. "David, they forced me to resign. Effective immediately. I'm clearing out my office." I let out a low whistle, so he was done. Career at TechCore over in a blink. And with cause like this, good luck getting a glowing reference. Likely he'd struggle to find anything near that salary again, especially with a looming divorce. Sarah: "Oh God, I can't believe this. This is a nightmare." David: "Monica, she told me she's going to the board. I think she might have reported it. Or someone else did. I don't know. This is insane." Interesting. David suspected Monica might have ratted him out to his company's leadership out of spite. He wasn't even considering that an unrelated third party, like me, could be behind it. That was fine by me. Let him chase shadows. Sarah: "I'm basically fired, David. They said we violated company policy. They said I should have known to disclose a relationship or avoid one with a superior. This is so humiliating. Everyone at work knows something's up." I could almost hear her crying through the pixels of the text. A pang of something like grim contentment hit me. My wife had loved her job. She took pride in it. Now it was potentially gone, or at best tarnished irreparably. Another piece of her life, their lives, had been smashed. David: "I'm so sorry. I'll try to fix this. Maybe talk to legal, but given my record, I doubt it. They already had the paperwork ready. This must have been in motion since yesterday." He wasn't wrong. HR moves fast when they smell blood. Sarah: "What do we do now? If we're both jobless, this is awful." David: "One thing at a time. My phone's been blowing up. Monica told a few people, I think. I'm getting calls from friends asking if I'm okay. It's a mess. So their social circles were finding out too, by word of mouth. Lovely. The more people who knew of their disgrace, the better." The texts tapered off as, presumably, they each dealt with their immediate crises. Sarah retreating home in misery, David packing his career into a sad cardboard box. I locked my secondary phone and returned it to its hiding place behind a book on the shelf, a satisfied grin on my face. Step 2 was complete. In the span of a week, I had detonated their personal and professional lives. That night, I finally brought up something to Sarah that I'd been saving. Over a late-night cup of tea at the kitchen table, I gently asked, "Honey, are you sure everything's all right? You seemed really upset today. Is it work? You know you can talk to me if something happened." She sat across from me, eyes rimmed red as if she'd been quietly crying. She fiddled with the mug between her hands. For a moment I thought she might spill the truth, confess everything here and now. But then she swallowed and forced another weak smile. "Work has just been stressful. There's some shakeup going on. It's nothing for you to worry about." I reached out and squeezed her hand, pretending to look concerned. "I hate seeing you like this. You've been working so hard. Maybe you should take some time off, clear your head?" A strangled laugh escaped her. They did ask me to take some time off, actually, so I guess I'll be home a bit more." I widened my eyes in faux surprise. "Really? That's sudden. Well, maybe it's for the best if things are chaotic at the office." She bit her lip and nodded, tears shining. I could see the shame in her face. She wouldn't meet my eyes for long. I wondered if she was thinking about Monica's threat to call me. Perhaps each day I didn't confront her was ratcheting up her anxiety. She might be waiting for the other shoe to drop, for me to present those motel photos and demand answers. But I did nothing of the sort. I simply acted the supportive husband, helping around the house, suggesting movies to watch to distract her. My calm kindness seemed to eat away at her. She grew quieter, more distant, likely racked by guilt or fear. Good? Let her feel it. On Sunday, a few days after the HR carnage, I even took a drive by the hotel where David was staying. I caught a glimpse of him in the lobby, unshaven, slumped, being whispered about by people who recognized him. He looked utterly defeated. Phase 2 of my plan was a resounding success. Sitting in my car, I allowed myself a deep breath. 2 strikes down, a few more to go. They were already suffering, but I intended to ruin them utterly. I wasn't done, not by a long shot. Next up, I'd be coming for everything else they held dear. Their money, their social standing, their peace of mind. I wanted them not just broken, but pulverized. Chapter 5. Mind Games and Misdirection. Their lives were in free fall, but I wanted them looking over their shoulders, jumping at shadows. Fear can break a person as surely as any concrete loss. So I set out to poison their peace of mind with a little psychological warfare. To keep suspicion off me, I decided to make the harassment look like it was coming from someone else, namely Monica. After all, who better to play the role of the vengeful, unhinged spouse? She had every reason to lash out at the woman who wrecked her marriage and the man who betrayed her. And as far as Sarah and David knew, Monica was already on the warpath. That Monday, I told Sarah I needed to drive down to Austin for an overnight work trip, a plausible excuse that allowed me to be away from home and unaccounted for. In reality, I had no intention of leaving Dallas. Instead, I checked into a small motel on the outskirts of town under a fake name, paying cash. It would be my base of operations for the next 24 hours. Under the flickering neon glow of the motel's sign, I prepped everything I needed in my room. From a duffel, I pulled out a baseball cap, a dark hoodie, and a pair of gloves, my disguise for the evening. I also laid out 2 plain envelopes and paper for notes. Using magazine clippings and a glue stick, yes, the classic ransom letter style, a bit theatrical but effective, I crafted 2 short messages. The first note read, "Homewrecker, stay away from my family or else." The second, "I see you. You will pay for what you've done." Neither was signed, but the implication was clear. These were from an enraged spouse. The all-caps clippings gave them a creepy, unhinged flair, as if composed by someone barely restraining their fury. Late that night, I set out on my mission. First stop was my own neighborhood. I parked my truck a few blocks away and approached my house, or rather, the house where my unsuspecting wife slept, on foot, sticking to the shadows. It felt strange sneaking around my own property, but necessary. Sarah was likely asleep by now, and I had disabled our doorbell camera earlier that week, claiming it was malfunctioning. I knew exactly where the blind spots were. I crept up to our front door and gently slid the "Homewrecker" note under it. For good measure, I placed a small rock against the paper so it wouldn't slide further in on the hardwood floor beyond. She'd see it when she awoke, or perhaps if she wandered to the kitchen for water at night. Either way, come morning, She'd be greeted with that lovely message apparently from her lover's scorned wife. My heart was pounding from the illicit thrill, but I wasted no time savoring it. I slipped away just as quietly as I came, vanishing into the night before any passing car could catch me lurking on my own stoop. Next, I headed for the Marriott Hotel where David was staying. The area was quiet at this late hour, the parking lot half empty. I tugged my cap low and pulled up the hoodie to obscure my face from any security cameras. I'd scoped out the positions earlier when I followed him last time. David's BMW sat in the far corner, as I remembered. I approached it quickly, keeping the bulk of a pickup truck between me and the hotel lobby's line of sight. From my pocket, I drew a small utility knife. With one swift motion, I plunged it into the Beamer's front tire and slashed across. A soft hiss of air escaping was the only sound as the tire deflated. Petty? Perhaps. But I imagined David rushing out in the morning, already harried and miserable, only to find his expensive car hobbling on a flat. It brought a smile to my face. Before leaving, I tucked the second note, "I see you," under his windshield wiper. In case he missed the tire message, this would drive it home. The phrasing was intentionally vague, but combined with the vandalism, I knew he'd interpret it as a threat from someone furious with him. Likely he'd assume Monica or one of her friends had tracked him down. With both notes delivered and the deed done, I returned to my motel base and slept like a baby. The next morning, I awoke eager to witness the fallout. I didn't have to wait long. By 7 a.m., my spy app relayed frantic messages from Sarah's phone. Sarah, to David, "Monica left a threat at my house. I found a note this morning. It said I'm a homewrecker and to stay away from her family. I'm shaking." I pictured her discovering the note at dawn, heart pounding, hands trembling as she read those pasted letters. Good. David responded not long after. David, "Jesus, I found one too on my car. Tires slashed. I can't believe she'd go this far." He attached a photo of his slashed tire and the note I left. It was almost comical seeing my handiwork captured in his message, like admiring a piece of art I'd created. Sarah, oh God, what do we do? Should we call the police?" I snorted to myself. The police? For a couple of anonymous notes and a slashed tire? They'd file a report and not much else. Monica was smart enough not to show up in person. Not that Monica was actually doing any of this. And I'd been careful about fingerprints and cameras. No, the cops would be about as useful as a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. David, I don't know. If we involve police, this gets even messier. No proof it's her except we suspect. And if Jack doesn't know yet, this could expose everything. Interesting. Even now, they were concerned about keeping me in the dark. David probably thought Monica hadn't actually called me yet, that these acts of revenge were her chosen outlet instead. They were likely hoping to ride this out quietly rather than escalate. Sarah, she's unhinged. What if she hurts us? I'm scared, David. David, meet me later. We'll talk in person. And be careful. Maybe you should stay somewhere else for a few days. I can pay for a hotel. Sarah, I can't just vanish. Jack would notice. He still doesn't know anything, I think. There it was again. The little dance of uncertainty about me. I was almost offended. Hadn't I played my role convincingly enough? Well, after this morning, I imagined Sarah might suspect I knew something. The note said, "Stay away from my family." To a rational mind, that could also imply an angry husband, me, telling her to back off. But she clearly thought it was Monica, likely because Monica had already threatened to call me. And who else's family would she be wrecking but Monica's? I was counting on that interpretation. I left the motel after checkout and returned to the office around lunchtime on Tuesday, as if I'd driven back from Austin. Before heading home, I made one more stop. A local florist. There, I picked out a modest bouquet of lilies. Innocent enough, except I had the florist include a small blank note card. When I got home, Sarah was curled on the couch looking ashen, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm spring day. She sat up when she heard me come in. "You're back," she said softly. Her eyes darted to the flowers in my hand. "Yeah," I smiled, feigning cheeriness. "Trip ended early. Thought I'd surprise you. These are for you, honey." I offered the bouquet. For a split second, her face was a portrait of conflicted emotion, guilt, gratitude, and utter anxiety all at once. She took the lilies I carefully. They're beautiful, thank you. Her voice cracked. Hey, what's wrong? I asked, playing dumb but concerned. I sat next to her. You look upset. She tried to muster a dismissive explanation. It's nothing, really. I thought I heard someone at the door late last night. And then this morning, I found, like, a piece of nasty junk mail on the doorstep. Probably just stupid neighborhood kids playing a prank. She gave a brittle laugh. Gave me a scare is all. I put on an expression of concern. That's odd. Want me to call the neighborhood watch or something? No, she said quickly, then softened. No, it's fine. I threw it away. Just a dumb prank. Her fingers plucked nervously at the edges of the bouquet's wrapping. I gently rubbed her back. You've been really jumpy lately. Are you sure work stress is the only thing going on? You'd tell me if something else was wrong, right? That nearly broke her. Her eyes welled up and she turned to bury her face against my chest. I felt her tears dampen my shirt. I'm sorry, she choked out, which was not exactly an answer to my question but spoke volumes. I've just been so stressed. I stroked her hair, feeling a cold satisfaction beneath my facade of reassurance. It's all right, I whispered. Everyone has rough patches. She clung to me desperately. You're so good to me, Jack, she mumbled between quiet sobs. I don't deserve you. On that, she was absolutely correct. I held her until her crying subsided, murmuring gentle lies like it's okay, and I love you. Each word tasted bitter, but she lapped it up, likely hating herself even more. And that was fine by me. That evening, Sarah said she was going to bed early. Emotional exhaustion, no doubt. I told her I'd clean up the kitchen and join her soon. The moment she was out of sight, I retrieved my hidden phone to review any new communications. There were updates from earlier in the day between her and David. Sarah, Jack came home with flowers for me. I feel like such a horrible person. I almost told him everything. Reading that, I paused. One hand clenched into a fist. She got flowers from me, and her first instinct was guilt-ridden confession. Huh. Part of me wished she had confessed, just to see the look on her face when I turned the tables. But this charade needed to play out a bit longer. David. Not yet. We need to figure out a plan. Maybe if we lay low, Monica will cool off. So they still thought it was Monica terrorizing them. Perfect, Sarah. I'm scared. I think she really might try to hurt us. What if she tells Jack everything if she hasn't already? David. I'll talk to her. Try to reason. She's hurt and angry, but she's not crazy. She just wants to make me suffer. If we keep our distance for now, maybe she'll stop. I smirked. David, ever the optimist, thinking he could appease Monica. Little did he know, the person making him suffer was nowhere near done yet. There was one more exchange about logistics. David, I got my tire fixed. Moving to a different hotel tonight, just in case. I'll send you the new info. Don't come here. If she's tracking me, I don't want you near ground zero. Sarah, okay, be safe. So he was scared enough to relocate to another hotel. Good. Keep running, I thought. You won't escape the reach of what I have planned. I tucked the phone away and went to join my wife in bed. She was already asleep, or pretending to be, curled up facing away. I lay there on my back, staring at the ceiling in the dark, hands behind my head. They were terrified, exactly as intended. Sarah flinched at every noise. David was jumping from one hideout to another. And through it all, they still hadn't come clean to me or anyone who could help them. They were isolating themselves with their guilt and fear. That was an edge I would continue to exploit. Smiling to myself in the darkness, I mentally checked off another item on my list. I had more chaos to sow, but tonight I could savor the sweet tension I'd created in their lives. They had no idea what was coming next. Chapter 6, Squeezing the Purse Strings. By now, their emotional and professional lives were in tatters. It was time to hit them where it really hurts for the long haul. The wallet. Money isn't everything, but losing it can send people into panic and desperation, especially when layered atop personal ruin. I wanted them not only broken-hearted and disgraced, but also broke. I had already laid groundwork on this front. Weeks ago, during my planning stage, I quietly opened new bank accounts in my name only and started funneling funds away from our joint accounts. I rerouted my paycheck, transferred savings, and even changed the passwords on our online banking. I told Sarah the website had prompted a security update. Bit by bit, the nest egg we'd built together was now firmly under my sole control. Sarah was too distracted by her affair and then the subsequent chaos to notice the slow drain. Now I accelerated the process. On Wednesday morning, I scheduled a large transfer from the last remaining joint account into my private one, essentially emptying it out. I left just enough in the joint checking to cover minor bills and avoid immediate suspicion, but not enough for anything beyond that. I also maxed out and canceled a credit card that we technically shared, claiming it was compromised and needed replacement. That afternoon, I got a text from Linda, my divorce attorney, confirming she had filed the initial divorce petition at the county courthouse under seal to avoid tipping off Sarah yet, and a request for a temporary restraining order on our assets. In Texas, once the spouse is served, those orders freeze major financial moves, but I'd already moved what I needed. The TRO would simply prevent her from moving or spending assets once she got served. A precaution to box her in. I told Linda to hold off serving papers for a little longer. There were a couple more scenes I wanted to play out first. Meanwhile, I had also decided to aid Monica in her forthcoming divorce battle with David. Using a throwaway email, I anonymously sent Monica copies of the financial documents Ethan had dug up, bank statements, investment account summaries, even a hint that David might be hiding cash, that inheritance, she should inquire about. I knew any decent divorce lawyer would salivate at those numbers. If David thought losing his job was bad, wait until Monica's lawyers got through with him. Sure enough, by Thursday, I picked up signs that the financial vice was tightening around them both. First came a string of texts from Sarah mid-morning. Sarah to David. Did Monica freeze your bank accounts? I just got an alert my credit card was canceled and our savings account is nearly empty. I'm kind of freaking out. I chuckled at that. Part of it was me, part possibly Monica's doing. Likely, Monica had indeed filed for divorce and their joint accounts were now inaccessible to David without her agreement. Combined with my maneuvers on our side, poor Sarah was discovering her safety nets vanishing one by one. David replied after some minutes. David, my personal accounts are frozen pending divorce, yes. Monica's lawyers moved fast. I can't believe this, she's trying to choke me out financially. He wasn't wrong, though I had given her the noose. David, what do you mean savings empty? Did Jack do something? Sarah, I'm not sure. Maybe? Or maybe I misremembered the balance. He hasn't said anything. I haven't dared ask. I'm scared he might be on to me. Reading that, I smirked. She suspected, but she wouldn't confront me about it because that would mean admitting why our finances might suddenly be splitting. Clever girl, but not clever enough. David, if he knows and he's moving money, that's bad. Texas is community property. If he proves adultery, you could lose a lot in the divorce. Sarah, don't you think I know that? God, this just keeps getting worse. I have no job, and if Jack divorces me, I'll have nothing. I felt a dark thrill at those words. Nothing. Yes, that was exactly what she'd be left with when I was through. David, let's not panic. Maybe it's a bank mistake. And Jack hasn't served you papers, right? Maybe he still doesn't know. Or hasn't decided what to do. Ever the hopeful tone, even as everything crumbled. He was grasping at straws. There was a pause. Then Sarah sent another message, one that inadvertently made me laugh out loud. Sarah, worst case, if I lose everything, at least we have each other? That sounds so pathetic, I'm sorry. Truly pathetic indeed. She was envisioning some scenario where they end up together. Penniless pariahs, but in love. What a touching little Bonnie and Clyde fantasy. Except I suspected when push came to shove, David's self-preservation would trump any grand romance. And Sarah, for all her talk, was terrified of losing the comfortable life I'd provided. David's response was delayed and not exactly enthusiastic. David, we'll figure it out. Let me see what I can do about money. Maybe I can sell some stock or borrow from my 401k to keep us afloat for now. I knew that would be difficult with his assets frozen, but let him try. Desperation might lead him to other rash decisions, which could play into my hands later. That evening, I set up a little situation at home to deepen Sarah's anxiety about money. We needed groceries, and she offered to go to the supermarket, probably to escape the house and her thoughts. I knew she'd try using our joint debit card, which now had only a few $100s in it. Sure enough, less than an hour later, she called me from the store, voice trembling with embarrassment and worry. Jack, my card got declined, and I'm not sure why. Could you check with the bank? It's saying insufficient funds. I feigned surprise. What? That's strange. There should be plenty in there. I pulled up the bank app on my phone, already knowing what she'd find. It's nearly empty, I murmured, then snapped my fingers as if I'd had an epiphany. Oh, right. I transferred most of the savings into a short-term investment last week. I meant to tell you, I left just a bit for bills. I guess I miscalculated. Oh. She sounded simultaneously relieved that I had an explanation and dismayed by it. An investment? What kind? Just a high-yield bond a friend tipped me off about, I lied smoothly. It's locked in for a month, but we'll get a nice return. Don't worry, I can move some funds back if you need. For now, just use the credit card. There was a pause. Actually, I think the credit card might have an issue too. I got an email that a new card is being issued? I clucked my tongue. Ah, yeah. They detected some fraudulent charges, so they're sending a replacement. Bad timing. I'm sorry. Use the backup Visa in the meantime, or I can pay over the phone now if you're at the register. She quickly insisted it was fine, she'd just use another card. One that, unbeknownst to her, I would also cut off soon. She hung up soon after, and I imagined her standing in that checkout line, face flushed, feeling the walls closing in financially. To her credit, she'd thought on her feet and called me rather than stewing in silence. If I hadn't had an excuse ready, that could have been an accidental confrontation. But I handled it. When she came home, I greeted her with casual aplomb, even as she apologized for bothering me about the card. I shrugged it off with a smile, saying I should have communicated better about the investment. I tossed in a line about planning for our future, making sure we were secure. The irony was rich. Sarah managed a weak, grateful smile and kissed my cheek. You always take such good care of me, of us, she said softly, guilt shadowing her eyes. Yes, I do, I replied, looking right at her. She broke eye contact first. As we unpacked groceries together, she seemed deep in thought, likely calculating how utterly dependent on me she was at this point. No job, no income, and suddenly no access to funds without my help. The weight of that reality must have been crushing, and I wanted it to crush her. Every piece of her life I was determined to control or destroy. Later that night, more texts came through. Sarah, to David. Jack explained the money thing. He moved it to some investment. I can't exactly protest without raising suspicion. At least bills are paid, but I feel trapped. David. I'm sorry. I'm liquidating what small accounts I have left free so I can get some cash. Monica's lawyers locked my main ones. I never imagined she'd be so ruthless. Sarah. We did this to ourselves. David. Don't. We just fell in love. It was bad timing, wrong situation. Once the dust settles, we'll start fresh, okay? I promise. I rolled my eyes at his gallant tone. Start fresh with what? David was hemorrhaging money to his soon-to-be ex, and I would ensure Sarah was left with zilch from me. Perhaps they fantasized about running off to some cheap apartment together, living on love and instant ramen. More likely they hadn't thought that far and were clinging to hollow words. Either way, the noose was tightening. In a matter of days, I had starved their finances. David faced a costly divorce and lost income, while Sarah's lifeline to our assets was severed. They were cornered, and they knew it. And a cornered animal is prone to panic. Perfect. In their scramble to survive, they'd be even more likely to make mistakes. Or turn on each other when it got dire. I leaned back in my chair after reading their messages, steepling my fingers. They were nearly at their breaking point. Just a couple more pushes, and the grand finale would be at hand. Those pushes would come in the form of public exposure, the final death blow to their reputations and relationships. After that, I'd deliver the coup de grace, revealing my hand and walking away from the ruin I'd created, victorious. I allowed myself a tight, anticipatory grin. Tomorrow would be a big day. Chapter 7. All is revealed. Friday dawned, and with it came the final act of my carefully orchestrated vengeance. It was time to drag their sins into the light for everyone to see. No more secrets, no whispers. This would be a public spectacle of their betrayal. I spent the early morning finalizing a mass email. Over the past week, I'd quietly compiled a list of contacts. Our mutual friends, neighbors, Sarah's parents and sister, a few of her close co-workers, ex-co-workers now, and even some of David's acquaintances I knew of from parties or social media. I wanted a wide net, one that would ensure the scandal spread like wildfire through their personal and professional circles. The email's tone was measured, almost clinical, but the content was explosive. I wrote it as if I were an anonymous, concerned individual, maybe one of those friends who just can't keep the truth hidden out of moral obligation. The text went something like this. To all concerned, it is with a heavy heart that I share this information. I believe you deserve to know the truth about an ongoing affair between Mrs. Sarah, last name, and Mr. David Mercer. Evidence of their misconduct is attached to this email, including photographs and correspondence, indicating a long-term extramarital relationship. This affair has already caused significant harm. Marriages violated, families hurt, careers ended under scandalous circumstances. Those of you who know Sarah or David personally may be shocked by this revelation, but the proof is undeniable. Please see attached photo of Sarah and David at Lone Star Lodge Motel, July 12, 2024, 8:45 p.m. Screenshot of text conversation explicitly discussing secret meetings, names visible. Additional context on their deception and lies to their spouses and colleagues. This disclosure is made in the interest of truth and accountability. Cheating and deceit should not be swept under the rug, especially when it impacts so many around them. Signed, a friend who believes the truth matters. I attach several choice files, the clearest motel photo of them embracing, a couple of damning text screenshots, e.g., Sarah writing, "My husband suspects nothing," and "Can't wait to be in your arms," again, and even a short audio clip. That clip was from a voicemail Sarah once left David, cooing about how much she loved their last night together. I had pulled it from her phone logs. It was incriminating in her own voice. By 7:30 a.m., with one deep breath, I hit send. The distribution list was hidden, BCC'd. None of the recipients would know who else got it, but I knew gossip would fill in those blanks soon enough. To cover my tracks a bit, I'd routed the email through a dummy account and a VPN. It would look like an alias, perhaps even one of David's scorned colleagues or a spurned friend. Let them wonder, was it Monica? Was it Jack? Was it some office whistleblower? The important thing was that the truth bomb was delivered, and it detonated gloriously. Within minutes, my phone was blowing up with shocked calls and messages from friends and family who had seen the email. I answered one or two, playing the part of the stunned, heartbroken husband as they offered me their sympathies. I was still on one such call when an anguished scream erupted from our bedroom. I hung up immediately and hurried down the hall. I found Sarah on the bedroom floor, phone in hand, tears streaming down her face. She looked up at me with an expression I'll never forget, a mixture of terror, shame, and despair. "Jack," she croaked, her voice raw. I can explain." She must have thought someone forwarded me the email or that I saw it independently. I decided to play along for now, as if this moment was me truly confronting the cheating wife. "What the hell is this?" I snapped, holding up my own phone which displayed the incriminating photo of her and David. I had to give myself an inward pat on the back. I sounded genuinely outraged and hurt. Sarah collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably. I'm so sorry, she keened over and over, unable to string together any explanation beyond that. I loomed over her, every bit the betrayed husband finally unleashing. "How long, Sarah? How long have you been lying to me?" My voice was cold with anger. I didn't even have to fake at this point. I could summon plenty from the memory of her actual betrayal. She crawled forward, daring to grasp at my pant leg. Please, it just happened. I never meant to fall in love with him." The words spilled out between sobs before she realized they only damned her further. "Love." I recoiled, yanking my leg from her grip as if her touch burned. "You destroy our marriage, sleep with another man under my nose, and you call it love?" She was a wreck, hair wild, face blotchy with tears. "I didn't want to hurt you. I was weak and stupid and it just got out of control." "You're damn right it's out of control," I snarled, gesturing broadly. "Everyone knows, Sarah. My family, our friends, everyone saw what you've done. Do you have any idea the humiliation you've brought on me?" On yourself? She rocked back, hugging herself, eyes squeezed shut as if to block out the reality. Her phone on the carpet beside her lit up incessantly with new messages. I caught glimpses on the screen. Her mother's name, her sister, a half-dozen missed calls and texts from friends. The world was closing in on her. I'll do anything, Jack, she cried. Therapy. Cut him off completely, whatever it takes. Please don't leave me. We can move away, start over. I laughed, a short, cruel sound. Start over? Are you insane? There's no coming back from this, Sarah. My voice dropped to an icy monotone. We are done. She wailed at those words, reaching out for me again. I stepped back, avoiding her touch. Stand up, I ordered. She struggled to her feet, swaying. I've never seen a person so broken. It was as if her body might crumble under its own weight. I walked over to the dresser, pulled open a drawer, and yanked out a manila envelope, the divorce papers Linda had prepared. In the chaos of the morning, she hadn't noticed them sitting there. I all but flung them at Sarah. They spilled against her chest and onto the floor. Her red-rimmed eyes widened as she realized what they were. No, please, Jack. She dropped to her knees again, fumbling with the papers as if she could undo their existence by gathering them up. Don't do this. Too late, I said flatly. It's already filed. Consider yourself served. Her mouth opened and closed, fish-like, as she pawed through the petition. She saw the words, adultery written as the cause, the request that she get no spousal support, that our assets be split heavily in my favor given her misconduct. Oh God, she moaned. Jack, how? She likely wondered how I'd prepared all this so swiftly. For the first time that morning, I let slip a little of the aid and showed her a hint of the truth behind my eyes. I crouched down before her, forcing her to look at me. Did you really think I was oblivious? I hissed so only she could hear, over the muffled din of her still buzzing phone. I've known for a long time, Sarah. Her tear-filled eyes searched mine in dawning realization and fear. What? I leaned in, my voice a low, dangerous whisper. Who do you think sent those emails? Who do you think orchestrated every piece of your miserable downfall? The lost job, the missing money, the little notes that scared you? That was me. I tapped my chest, watching the horror flood her expression. I gave you all the rope, and you hung yourselves with it. Sarah's face went ashen. She actually stopped crying, shock overtaking sorrow. No, you couldn't have... I smiled, a predator baring teeth. I did, and I'd do it again. You threw away our life for what? That prick? Now you'll pay for it 100 times over. She stared at me as if seeing a stranger. Perhaps she truly never knew me or the darkness I was capable of. Slowly, she shook her head, backing away on her hands. Jack, you're scaring me. Good, I snapped, straightening up. In a louder voice, returning to my role of outraged husband, I said, pack your things and get out. Today, I don't want to spend one more night under the same roof. Her lip quivered. I have nowhere to go. It was true. She had no job. Likely her family would be too furious to take her in immediately, and David's situation was hardly stable either. Not my problem. Figure it out, I said coldly. Stay with your lover for all I care. He owes you that much, don't you think? She flinched as if slapped. With a defeated sob, she nodded. Okay. She likely realized pleading was useless. I was beyond reach, beyond caring. I left her there on the floor with the divorce papers strewn around her like fallen leaves. I'll be back this evening, I tossed over my shoulder. You better be gone by then. If not, I'll throw your stuff on the lawn and change the locks. I didn't wait for a reply. I stepped out of the room, out of the house. As I walked down the driveway, I heard her wail erupt anew inside, a raw, primal sound of despair. It echoed faintly down the quiet suburban street. Neighbors would hear if they hadn't already heard the news elsewhere. I didn't care. Outside, the sun was shining brightly, birds chirping in the pecan tree. It was a beautiful Texas morning, at stark odds with the emotional ground zero inside my house. I felt good, better than I had in weeks. The weight of deception was gone from the air. Now there was only the delicious aftermath of truth laid bare. I got into my car and drove away, leaving behind the wreckage of my marriage without a backward glance. Sarah's social and personal world was burning down, and I didn't need to witness every flicker of flame. I had one more piece of business to attend to. David. Chapter 8. Reckoning. He was dealing with the same fallout. As I expected, the mass email had reached David's world, too. I was barely a mile from home when my phone rang with an unknown Dallas number. I had a hunch. I answered, "Hello?" There was silence, a heavy breath. Then, a familiar male voice, strained and low. "Jack?" "Speaking," I replied curtly as if I didn't recognize him already. "It's David." I grimaced in fake surprise. "You've got some nerve calling me." I know. "I deserve every bit of your anger," he stammered. He sounded like a man barely holding it together. I just, I wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything." I let a long silence hang, only the sound of wind through my open car window. His apology meant nothing to me, but I was curious what he hoped to accomplish. When I didn't respond, he continued, words tumbling out in a rush. "If I could take it back, I would. You have to know I never meant for anyone to get hurt. I fell in love with her, but it was wrong, and now everyone's suffering." His voice choked, as if he might cry. I merely clenched my jaw, keeping my tone icy. "Suffering is exactly what you deserve, David." He took that like a slap but pressed on. "Please, if you have any mercy, call off whoever is doing this. The emails, the harassment. Was it you? Or Monica? I'm begging you, it needs to stop. My kids, they'll hear about this. It's destroying lives." I barked a short, bitter laugh. "Now you care about the kids? Should have thought of that before screwing my wife." He fell silent, shame shutting him up. I seized the moment. "You want to talk? Fine. Meet me at Greenleaf Park in 1 hour. By the benches." That was a quiet public park, usually empty on weekday mid-mornings. "Oh, okay," he agreed quickly, perhaps relieved I was willing to meet at all. "I'll be there. I'm hanging up now. You've got one chance to say whatever you need to say to my face." I ended the call without waiting for more. A thin smile crept onto my lips. He was coming to plead for mercy, or maybe to grovel. Either way, this confrontation would be on my terms. The last loose end to tie up. I made a quick detour by home to retrieve something from my safe, a small voice recorder. If David planned to deny or spin things, I wanted a record. Also, if he tried anything stupid out of desperation, it wouldn't hurt to have evidence. By the time I arrived at Greenleaf Park, the place was deserted as expected. Mid-morning sun filtered through the oak trees. I spotted David sitting on a bench near a dry fountain, hands clasped nervously. He looked haggard, dark circles under his eyes, yesterday's stubble on his chin, clothes rumpled. He'd lost the polished swagger that once might have intimidated me. Now he was just a broken man. I parked and approached on foot, stopping a few paces away. "David." He stood up, looking unsure whether to extend a hand or keep distance. He settled for shoving his hands in his jacket pockets. "Jack." For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Face to face at last without pretenses. I could see fear in his eyes and perhaps regret. I wondered what he saw in mine. He quickly glanced away. "You got something to say? Say it," I said evenly. He swallowed hard. "I know you have no reason to forgive me. I don't expect that. I just want you to know how truly sorry I am. What I did was unforgivable and cowardly." He took a breath, voice trembling slightly. "If it means anything, I did love her. But I also respect that she was your wife, and I violated that. I violated your trust when you never did anything to me." I felt a flicker of irritation. How dare he speak of love after all this? My fists clenched at my sides. "You blew up my life, ruined your own family, and now everything's out in the open. What did you think was going to happen, David? That you two would ride off into the sunset scot-free?" He flinched, tears welling in his eyes, but said nothing. I closed the distance until I was inches from him. I could smell the fear and desperation on his sweat. In a low hiss, meant for his ears alone, I delivered the final twist of the knife. "Do you know who made you pay, David? All those things that happened, getting exposed at work, the tire slashing, the money troubles, that wasn't Monica. It was me." He froze, eyes widening. I saw realization and disbelief war within them. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I continued, soft and menacing. "I played you both like pawns. Every bad turn, every sleepless night you've had recently, I engineered it. Consider it a down payment on the pain you caused. You, he croaked, voice failing. But how? I allowed myself a thin, mirthless grin. You'd be surprised what a man is capable of when you take everything from him. While you two were rolling in the sheets, I was planning how to dismantle your lives. Step by step, quietly, efficiently, and you never saw it coming. David staggered back a half step as if the weight of my words physically struck him. His face contorted, anger flickering through the shock. You ruined me, he murmured, almost inaudible. I spread my hands in a mock shrug. You ruined yourself. I just made sure the consequences caught up with you. His breathing turned ragged. I could see rage now battling with guilt. Good. Let him feel some righteous anger, if only to do something stupid. I was ready for it. You vindictive son of a... He suddenly lunged forward, swinging a wild punch at me. Perhaps he thought of all he'd lost and needed to lash out, but I was ready. I sidestepped easily. His fist grazed my shoulder without impact. His momentum carried him off balance, and I capitalized. A quick, hard jab to his gut, and he doubled over with a woof of pain. He stumbled to one knee, gasping. I'm sorry, he wheezed reflexively, even as he tried to recover from the blow. I grabbed him by the collar and hauled him up roughly. Sorry doesn't cut it, I growled, then slammed my fist across his jaw. Pain jolted up my knuckles, but it was satisfying to feel the impact. David crashed to the ground, spitting blood. He looked up at me, dazed, one hand on the grass and the other cradling his face. The fight had gone out of him as quickly as it came. I stood over him, chest heaving from adrenaline. He was beaten in every sense now. Oh, if you ever come near me again, if you ever even think of contacting me or trying to get back at me for what I've done, I crouched, grabbing his hair and forcing him to meet my eyes, which I knew were burning with hatred. I will destroy whatever tiny pieces of your life remain. Understood? He nodded frantically, whimpering. Yes, understood. I released him with a shove. He collapsed back, a broken heap on the ground. And don't worry, I added coldly. You and Sarah deserve each other. Go, play house in the gutter for all I care. You'll find it's a lot harder to sustain true love when you're both ruined and alone. He just sobbed, pressing a hand to his swollen jaw. I stepped away, disgusted. My hand throbbed from the punches, but I welcomed the pain. It was a reminder that this was real, that I'd truly done all this. I looked down at the pathetic figure of David Mercer one last time, once a smug, successful manager who took what he wanted. Now just a shattered man with nothing. Without another word, I turned and walked away, leaving him to his misery in the empty park. Behind me, I could hear his muffled cries. It was music to my ears. I got in my car and drove off, adrenaline still coursing. That confrontation had been the final act I needed. A physical, undeniable triumph over the man who had cuckolded me. Some would say I stooped to his level by resorting to violence and sabotage. But those people hadn't lived my last few months. They hadn't felt the particular hell of betrayal that I had. I felt no guilt. None. In fact, as I left David bleeding and crying, I felt a grim satisfaction settle in me. Justice, my version of it, had been served. It was early afternoon by the time I returned to the house. Sarah was gone as I'd ordered. A note on the kitchen table, clearly tear-stained, said she would stay at a friend's for now, perhaps too ashamed to admit she was going to David, or maybe David was in no shape to take anyone in. It didn't matter. I crumpled the note and tossed it aside. The quiet of the house wrapped around me. For the first time in a long time, it felt like a sanctuary rather than a battlefield. I sat down on my sofa amidst the stillness and exhaled a long, slow breath. It was over. I had won. Chapter 9. Aftermath. 3 months later, I sat on the back patio of my house now, with no memory of Sarah left on the deed or in the rooms. The Texas summer was in full bloom, warm breeze rustling the trees as I sipped a cold beer and reflected on the whirlwind that had passed. The divorce was finalized faster than I expected. Sarah didn't contest a thing. Perhaps she was too drained or ashamed to fight, or perhaps she knew it was futile given the mountain of evidence against her. Either way, the judge granted me the lion's share of our assets. Our home stayed mine. Our savings, what remained after my strategic moves, were largely awarded to me, and no spousal support was warranted for an adulterous wife with capable earning potential. In short, She walked away with next to nothing. Exactly what I'd planned. Word in our circles was that Sarah left Dallas not long after everything went down. I heard she went to stay with a cousin in another state, possibly to escape the scorn and gossip that trailed her. Not that running saved her reputation. Social media has a long memory. Former friends cut her off entirely. Her own parents, devout and traditional, were devastated by her actions. I recall her mother calling me, voice shaking, to apologize for her daughter's behavior. I told her it wasn't her fault at all, and in truth I bore her mother no ill will. But I doubt Sarah's Thanksgiving invite is still valid after the shame she brought on her family. And David? His divorce from Monica became the talk of their suburb. She took him to the cleaners as expected. The Mercer family home was sold off in the proceedings, the proceeds mostly going to Monica and the kids' trust. David's fancy car was also sold, since he needed funds to appease the settlement. Monica got primary custody of their children, and David has awkward supervised visitation a few times a month. The judge didn't look kindly on his extramarital exploits. He eventually moved out of state, presumably to find work where his name wasn't mud. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that he's selling insurance now, a far cry from the bright career he had. As for the star-crossed lovers, Sarah and David, their grand romance did not survive the fire I set. In the immediate aftermath, they clung to each other out of necessity, or perhaps the delusion that their love would make the sacrifices worth it. For a brief time, they even rented a small apartment together on the outskirts of town, I'm told. But reality has a way of killing delusion. Within weeks, financial stress and mutual blame tore them apart at the seams. I imagine the arguments. Sarah furious at what she lost by following him. David resentful that she came with so much baggage. Maybe they each suspected the other of being the source of the anonymous email that ruined them. Neither will ever know the truth of that, I expect. In the end, whatever feelings drew them together turned to ash. They broke up, each now truly alone. Sometimes I wonder if they regret everything. If in the dead of night Sarah wishes she'd never looked at David, and if David curses himself for ever pursuing her. I like to think they do. Regret is a slow poison, and they'll sip it for years. And me? I've come out the other side of this storm remarkably intact. Better than intact, in some ways. Friends and colleagues rallied around me once the truth came out. I was the poor, loyal husband, wronged so terribly. I didn't correct any misassumptions. Let them think the affair was exposed by some good Samaritan. I played the part of shocked victim publicly, and it earned me plenty of support. If anyone suspected I had a direct hand in expediting their downfall, they kept it to themselves. In the court of public opinion, I held the moral high ground. I still live in the same house. It's quieter now, but I've found I enjoy the solitude. I wake each day knowing the worst is behind me and feeling at peace with that. Perhaps I'm a colder man than I once was, but if so, that's the price of my enlightenment. Because here I am now, the betrayers cast out and everything they cherished in ruins, while I sit in the home I built, my bank account secure, my mind at ease. I take another pull of my beer and smile faintly to myself. Revenge isn't for everyone, true, but for me, it was the medicine needed to cure the illness inflicted on my life. They thought they could break me with their deceit. Instead, I broke them. And as far as I'm concerned, that is a perfectly fair trade.